Thank you for your interest in Navigating Our World 2016, a conference hosted by Brown Advisory, where we explore the long-term, future-focused trends that will shape our world and influence our investment thinking.
So, stepping back from the chaos and the violence we see every day in the press, let's start by learning a little more about hope. Recently, President Obama contrasted youth in the Middle East with youth in Southeast Asia, and here's what he said. Southeast Asia is filled with striving, ambitious, energetic people who every single day are scratching and clawing to build businesses, to get an education, to find jobs and build infrastructure. They are not thinking about how to kill Americans. True or not, this is a lot of people's view of youth in the Middle East. So, what are the hopes and dreams of Arab youth? How are they different from what we might expect? And how can we win their hearts and minds? Nadia, I'll start with you.
So this quote is so unfair because it makes it as if everybody just wants to kill Americans, but the reality paints a completely different picture. You have a youth bulge that is increasing and will peak in 2050. And with youth comes energy, creativity, determination, maybe recklessness, but also opportunities. So these youth, there's no place on earth in which they are more disadvantaged than in the Middle East. The educational system is designed to create obedient citizens and not people who think critically, people who can contribute to the global economy. So the majority of these youth are taking it upon themselves to educate themselves. And luckily, because of the internet, that is available for many. So there's actually a phenomenal cultural revolution taking place online, because the Arab youth are not allowed to physically congregate, to physically start businesses. There's this phenomenal research done at Oxford called the economics of the Arab Spring. And there's no other place on earth, a region, where it's harder to start a new business. So you have regimes that are not benign. They're not allowing people to have a stake in prosperity, in starting a business.
The reality of youth in the Arab world is that they are a perfect microcosm, a perfect barometer of adults, of all Arabs in the Arab world. We did a study in my institute at the American University of Beirut 10 years ago with UNICEF, this was just before the uprising started, looking at all available data and studies of Arab youth, and then we did some original research as well. And it showed that there was massive discontent among young people, mainly related to the same issues that drive discontent here, which is getting a job, being treated fairly, having a decent life, getting married, etc. And with that discontent, there was also huge effervescence and energy and dynamism. But the difficulty, as Nadia said, is that young people in the Arab world, unlike here, have neither a political process nor an open economy that allows them easily to get involved and improve their lives, that things are so much controlled. So what happened 10 years ago, around 2005, 2010, which was the turning point in the contemporary Arab world, was that many, many discontented young people just made parallel lives for themselves on the internet, in the mall, in the mosque, in the playground, immigrating. They put up with the stresses of their life and lack of opportunities, and then created parallel lives where they could listen to the music they wanted, talk about issues they wanted, and discuss things openly, which they couldn't do in real life. And therefore, you have really a polarization going on in the Middle East. There are small numbers of radical, terrorist, criminal young kids with adults. There's a small number of dynamic, entrepreneurial, creative, daring, wonderful people. You'll hear about them more from Chris, I think, people doing amazing stuff in new jobs, new investments. And there's a big mass of people right in the middle who don't actually know how to change their lives because they don't have the opportunity.
Well, how many people are in ISIS? What is the youth population of the Middle East? And what is the size of the problem or the potential as well that we're looking at?
Yeah, I think that what both these folks have said, I couldn't agree with more, and it's wonderful to hear from their perspective on the region. What I'd add on to this is a couple of things. I mean, one is, I think that the business model is a problem in our media, but I actually think narrative bias is much more so. So let me go at it anecdotally, and I'll give you numbers overall. I was just in a gathering of startups last December. It was 5,000 young people. Many of you have gone to such gatherings in Silicon Valley or Washington or New York or wherever overall. The only thing is that the gathering I went to was in Cairo, Egypt. 5,000 young Egyptians were in the old American University of Cairo, jamming, brainstorming, looking for money. It was completely familiar to anybody in this room what you do. But more interestingly, or as interestingly, 24 hours before that event, there was a different group of 5,000 young people gathered for the same purpose in Beirut, Lebanon. Now, I can assure you, if 10,000 young Arabs were gathered in the Middle East in 48 hours to talk about the Muslim Brotherhood, everyone in this room would know about it, and I suspect nobody in this room knows what I just told you overall. And that is because I think we get very locked and hooked into a certain narrative right now that is important. But by the way, I think ISIS is important. I think this is a very tough neighborhood. There are many things that are unpredictable. I'm not saying that's not the case. I'm saying that other things are going on as well. To your question, national security people will estimate anywhere between 25 to 50,000 actively in ISIS. There may be some tens of thousands more. The Arab world is a region of 350 million. There are 1.6 billion Muslims around the world. I can't tell you what Syria is going to look like in a year. I can't tell you what a softening China will look like in 3 years. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, by the end of this decade, 2/3 of humanity and 2/3 of the Arab world will be walking around with smart devices on their person. And you guys know that this isn't merely a better featured phone with really fun ways to watch video and that kind of stuff. This is literally in one device the same computing capacity that all of NASA had in 1969 to put a man on the moon. This means people can see each other, they can engage with each other in very different ways. They have this sense of empowerment because if you see someone just like you do something and it works, that means you can do the same thing and it works. So it's actually a flywheel of success breeding success.
Now we have access to our own devices, and when I was going to school in the Middle East, the teacher's job is to say, no questioning, you can't go there, this is forbidden, this is not allowed religiously, socially, politically. But when you're holding your own device, the teacher in your bedroom is not there to tell you, no, don't be curious about this or that. So you can really allow your imagination and curiosity and creativity run wild. And this is happening where you see people, again, creating YouTube channels that are competing. One YouTube channel has 100 million followers, 100 million. What the regimes want to have as a citizen does not exist anymore. Even the act of creating your own Facebook page is an act of autonomy. The act of commenting on any story, making fun of it, like what happens every day. Humor and political satire are enormous in the region. So there is already a different kind of citizen that is completely different what the regimes want to control. So yesterday's way of controlling people is completely gone. There is no way you can rewire people.
But when you start saying, we now for the first time have new tools at our disposal, which cheaply and affordably can get more information in more people's hands, to have that flywheel again of success coming, we can start looking at the equation through a very different lens, because the phenomenon that these two have described so beautifully and what's happening in the world right now is unprecedentedly bottom up. Yeah. People with the greatest stake to solve their own problems in their own backyard for the first time have tools that begin to go at them. And we'll see how it plays out.
How do people in the Western world, predominantly the West, and people in the Arab world work together to bring about this kind of change? Because all of the systems that the West has used, threats, interventions, drones, sanctions, programs, AID, none of them have worked. None of them have worked. The US has been fighting 25 years in Afghanistan, Iraq, with drones and killing people and wars and there's more Qaeda and ISIS people now than there ever was before. Why? I've been working on a study which will be published soon on why do people support or join ISIS in the Arab countries. I have a list of 80 different reasons, 80 different reasons. Each one of them by itself is powerful. Now, the number of people in ISIS is small. It's 30, 40, 50,000. But the driving forces of discontent, disequilibrium, indignity, humiliation, frustration, hopelessness, helplessness, all of these terrible things at the grassroots level around many Arab communities are still there, and they're worse now than they were 5 years ago. And that's what drives people to Qaeda and ISIS. And Qaeda and ISIS now are more powerful than they were when the global war on terror started. So there needs to be a radical change in Arab governance. There needs to be a radical change in Arab economic development and opportunity. And there needs to be a radical change in international policies by foreign powers in Europe, the Middle East, Israel, Russia, China, everywhere, including the powerful Arab countries themselves.
For more information about Brown Advisory, please visit our website, at brownadvisory.com.